I think we should get going, and I'm sure people will be joining us as we proceed here. Before we start, I just want to, first of all, welcome you to Sausalito Books by the Bay, where we are filming live, virtually, online here this afternoon. You are all Community Supported Bookstore members. This is an exclusive private event for you, and it's a very small way for us to show our appreciation for your generous and ongoing support. Um, you've been a part of our loyalty program since the very beginning, most of you, and in these very challenging and difficult times, it certainly makes a difference to have the community support that we do for this independent community bookstore. So it's with deep gratitude that I acknowledge your support. And I will repeat this, I mentioned it earlier, but this is a webinar versus a regular Zoom meeting, which means everyone is muted and no one is on the screen, so that there are no distractions and there's no peripheral noise that we're having to deal with. If you have a question, please submit it to the Q&A box, or you can chat with us. Angela is, you're going to be hearing from Angela King and Matthew Klein and Jeff Battis, as well as myself. And Angela is sort of monitoring all the Q&A, which we will address at the end of this presentation. So without further ado, we all know these are troubled, challenging times. And I'm going to start with what I call feel-good fiction, novels for the beach, the lake, your backyard. It's what I call the lighter side of summer reading. The first one I'm going to talk about is Mexican Gothic. It's gotten a lot of press recently, and it's Mexico, the 1950s. A dashing Mexico City socialite debutante travels to a crumbling old mansion in a very remote countryside area in Mexico to try and help her recently married cousin who seems to be in distress. It is very much a Gothic masterpiece, replete with family secrets, love, betrayal. It's a very seductive and suspenseful book that I think you will devour. I wish I had saved it for my summer vacation at the lake, but I couldn't wait, because once you open this book and start reading it, you can't let go. So highly recommend this. And it's not something I thought I would like, and I really, really enjoyed it for what that's worth. The next book, which I just can't say enough wonderful things about, The Color of Air by Gail Tsukiyama. It is a beautifully written, tender tale set on the Big Island of Hawaii in 1935, and it totally pulls you into the lives of this tight-knit Japanese Hawaiian community. Their secrets, the sugar cane plantations, the story of a native son returning to his homeland from the mainland. And it's all in the shadow of that volcano we know, Mauna Loa. And yes, it does erupt in the book. But the story is really about the compelling characters, and the author creates such an authentic sense of time and place that are truly mesmerizing. And it's a piece of Hawaiian history that about which I knew very little. So I really, really love this book, The Color of Air, and it's very new. It just came out. The Paris Hours by Alex George. So for all of you Francophiles, this is set between the wars, the world wars, and the shimmering city of light, as we know it at that time, is of course throbbing with artists, famous intellectuals, writers, musicians. But there are also four ordinary people that this book follows, their secrets, their intrigue. It is, if you can't go to Paris, you can kind of be there with this book. And it's a captivating novel with a very breathless ending. And it all takes place in the course of a single day in 1927. The Henna Artist. This is one of two books set in India that I'm going to talk about. They're very different. This one is set in the 1950s, The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. It's a very evocative novel. It's Jaipur. It's early 1950s, and The recently independent country of India is pivoting from more traditional to more modern ways. Lakshmi is an accomplished henna artist, if you know what henna is, and she's catering to the whims of wealthy upper class Indian women, but her carefully crafted independence is soon shattered as her past emerges to haunt her, including a sister she knew she didn't have. The author is a very skilled storyteller. You can smell the intoxicating fragrance of jasmine and frangipani. You can see the lush gardens, the herbal cures, the Indian proverbs, the palace intrigue. It all comes to life, as does the abject poverty, the arranged marriages, the prolific philandering, and it's a great summer read. I really enjoyed this book. Okay, all of you Jane Austen fans could rejoice because there are two books that are trending right now all about Jane Austen. And the first one is Miss Austen by Gil Hornby. Probably never heard of a woman named Cassandra Austen, but she was Jane Austen's sister. And this is a fictionalized tale of the two sisters based on real letters and their secrets, the private details, all about her literary legacy, which was apparently at risk at one point. So it's the untold story of probably the most important person in the legendary Jane Austen's life. The other book is The Jane Austen Society. It is a debut novel by a woman named Natalie Jenner. It is set in the English village of Claughton. Claughton was where Jane Austen's final home was. And it is here in this book, post-World War II, where a very unlikely and disparate group of characters, all wounded somehow from the war, come together to save her home by creating, you guessed it, the Jane Austen Society. It's a bittersweet but very touching story, all about the power of literature. So I think you'll enjoy this. It's one of local author C.G. Ware read this and gave it rave reviews. The next book is by an author you have probably heard of. Many of you probably read her first book, Before We Were Yours. Lisa Wingate has just published The Book of Lost Friends. And I loved Before We Were Yours. It's a disturbing but very fabulous book. And this book is just as engrossing, just as engaging. The title is based on ads called Lost Friends that were placed in Southern newspapers following the Civil War, basically recently freed slaves looking for their loved ones. So they posted these ads for lost friends. The story here, it's Louisiana, it's 1875, Reconstruction, and it's about three women who go on a rather harrowing journey together. One is a recently freed slave, one is a very pampered heir to a plantation that is now destitute, and she's with her Creole half-sister. After the beginning, the book then jumps to Louisiana, almost more than 100 years later, to 1987, where this long ago journey of these three women is resurrected, and there's a hidden book involved in this story that could change everything. I don't want to say too much more, but it's a very, very, just as engrossing as her other book, and it's something that stays with you. Okay, this book is, I don't even know, let me just say, two women, a chance encounter at an airport. Both of them are in desperate situations and they're hoping to disappear. They switch tickets. And one of the planes crashes. The woman who survives has to decide if she's going to fully accept and adopt the other's identity and everything that comes with it, which is not necessarily so pleasant. So I don't want to reveal more, but it's a very riveting, great summer read. Everybody knows Isabel Allende. one of our local, very prolific authors. This is her most recent book, which I've been talking about for a while, A Long Petal of the Sea. It's kind of vintage Allende. As always, the writing just sort of sweeps you up and away. This is a historical novel spanning decades. It starts with the Spanish Civil War and follows two young refugees who flee Spain and sail to Chile on Pablo Neruda's SS Winnipeg, which was a real ship. So it's a portrait of exile and longing for home, but also a real tribute to the fortitude of the human spirit and the power of hope and love. I have piles of books. Okay, I hope Barbara Sapienza is with us. I know she'd signed up for this. This is her most recent book. Some of you know Barbara. She is a local Sausalito author as well. And this is her most recent book. It's a very poetic and poignant coming of age story set in San Francisco's North Beach and Mission District. I always love books that have local venues that we know. And it is about a young woman who has a personal laundry service for very eclectic group of high-end clients in the city. And she is desperately seeking to understand her past because she was torn from her home in Italy at a young age, and also trying to figure out the present and the future. It's a wonderful summer read. It's a great book. And I always applaud Barbara Sapienza because she retired as a clinical psychologist at the age of 66 and went back to study creative writing. And this is her second book. The first one is Anchor Out, which we also have and I recommend. And it takes place right here in Sausalito about the anchor outs. Thank you, Barbara. Okay. So that was kind of the lighter side of summer reading, and now we're going to go to the darker, heavier side of summer reading, which I'm not going to do too much of this because I think we all need to be uplifted a little bit more than to get deep, dark, and depressed any more than we all are. So, but this book, it's very heavy, but it is brilliant. And some background on this as far as I'm concerned, I was at UC Berkeley during the Vietnam War. So needless to say, it was a big part of my life. And I've always been drawn to books about Vietnam and the war, and have read quite a bit from the American and South Vietnamese perspective, but this is from the North Vietnamese perspective, which I had never really read. It's about their experience. And it's an epic drama about the survival of 4 generations of a North Vietnamese family, their struggles against indignity, suppression, occupation, foreign and civil wars, the near total destruction of their land and homes, not to mention their lives. It's a part of the history that I did not know. The book starts with the Vietnam War as a backdrop. But it does chronicle all of the country's earlier struggles and how they impacted this one family. It's a gut-wrenching book. It's told through the eyes of the family's matriarch and her granddaughter. It's steeped in all the traditions of Vietnam and is truly a tribute to the resilience of women and children who were left behind by war. So anyone remotely interested in Vietnam and this horrific war, it's really a must read. And I can barely pronounce the author's name, which is why I didn't say it, but you can see it. The Mountains Sing. It's a great book. Another very heavy book, but is also, this is the other book about India, and it's in modern day India. It's called The Burning, and it is also a debut novel by a new author, and I can kind of do her name, Megha Majumdar. It is a very gripping, sinister tale, and it's been highly acclaimed, but it's absolutely worth reading. It begins with a fiery terrorist attack on a train in India where 100 people are trapped and die. And it then follows the lives of 3 characters following this attack, this event, whose lives become very entwined. One of them is a young Muslim woman who lives in the slum in India and is just sort of pulling herself up by her bootstraps. It is a very now novel tackling a lot of contemporary issues, everything from the abuse of social media to the rise of nationalism. But it also, don't despair, there are traces of love and tenderness in A World Gone Mad. Great book. Okay, we are now, I'm going to do some mysteries, which is also, I think, great escapism reading any summer, anytime, especially right now. A lot of you know Daniel Silva. He has written so many books. This is The Order. It's his newest novel, and it's vintage Silva, which means you can't put the book down. You just want to keep reading. It also is a Gabriel Allon. That's his main character in most of these books, who Gabriel is an intrepid spy, an art restorer, an Israeli intelligence officer, as in the Mossad. And this time, Gabriel ends up at the Vatican investigating the suspicious death of a pope. And he's also in search, as it turns out, for a long lost book. I love books about books that actually disputes human history as depicted in nothing less than the New Testament. So it's a great, great Daniel Silva read. Acts of Omission is by Jim Bostwick, another local author who lives in Marin and works in San Francisco. Jim has penned a very riveting thriller. It's a courtroom legal drama based on a true story and a very real, iconic San Francisco attorney, whose name I won't mention because I don't want to spoil the story, but you all know who he is. It all takes place in areas we know: San Francisco, Sausalito, Marin, Tahoe, so it's fun that way. But it's also very realistic, and it is a page turner. I couldn't put it down. Jim, for those of you who don't know him or didn't come to his book launch party here last year, is a nationally recognized plaintiff's trial attorney, best known for securing the largest medical malpractice jury verdict in US history. And it's a little bit about what this is about. So I think you'll really enjoy this. And the last mystery I'm going to talk about is the shooting at Chateau Rock. Martin Walker is one of my favorite mystery writers, basically because it's all set in the Dordogne, which I love, which prompts me to have another glass of wine, or sip rather. Thank you. In any event, this is another Bruno chief of police novel, like all of them, as I said, set in the Dordogne region of France. And I say, if you can't visit there this year, why don't you travel via book? These are delightful mysteries which have as much emphasis on food, lifestyle, and ambiance as they do the murder mystery at hand. This one involves a suspicious death, Russian oligarchs, a sheep farm, chateaus, a rock star, and of course, there's always a lot of food and wine. One entire page is devoted to making the perfect gazpacho, in which Bergerac white wine to drink and to add to it. There's another page on how to properly soften the herbed butter for your steamed asparagus. Anyway, it's really, they're fun books. And all three of these novels, one reason I like them is that they're not horrifically violent. You could actually give them to your children to read, I think. But they're great books. So we're going to now go to Matthew Klein, who is one of our part-time booksellers. Matthew's an avid reader who's going to share one of his favorites. He's the really tall, cute guy that you've seen in the store. He recently graduated from college. Lewis and Clark, right, Matthew? Is that right? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna turn him, let me turn him on here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Matthew.
All right, hi.
So Matthew just graduated from college and plans to go on for an advanced degree, get a master's in writing. So he's all about books. And he really knows graphic novels, but he's going to talk to you about a different kind of novel right now. So
Yes.
take
All
that.
right. Thank you very much. So this happens to be one of my favorite books. Can you see it okay?
Yeah.
It's my grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry. Frederick Bachman is an excellent author. Everyone in my family loves him. And this just happens to be one of my favorites. It's about a young girl named Elsa, and she doesn't fit in. She struggles to make friends, and she gets bullied at school. And it's about her relationship with her insane grandmother, who the book describes her as shooting at strangers with a paintball gun from the upstairs window, kind of crazy. And it's this wonderful character of someone who wants to fit in and someone who just doesn't care at all about fitting in. And it's sort of about how Elsa's life changes when her grandmother passes away and leaves her with this task of delivering letters to all of her old friends, like a final goodbye. And it's revealed that these people that Elsa knows in her life actually knew her grandmother very well. And we find out about how her grandmother changed the lives of these people. And the main focus of the story is how, with everybody you meet, there's a whole world going on beneath the surface that you don't know. And it's about those experiences where your view of the world changes. And what results is a very magical story. And there's a lot of that feel-good fiction aspect that Cheryl was talking about. There's a big focus on imagination and loving to tell stories and hear them. There's a lot of sequences where Elsa reads a bedtime story with her grandmother, or her grandmother makes up a bedtime story, and it's just about love and imagination, but it's also not too sentimental. They're both extremely cynical as characters, and there's a lot of dry wit, and there's a lot of dark humor. And they also tackle some very serious subject matter. There's one character in particular who his past sort of comes to light over the course of the story, and he's dealt with some truly horrible things in his past. So it's not, there's a lot of heavy subject matter, but it's all in a very heartfelt and magical way. And there's a lot of very well written characters in this story. And I would recommend it to children as well. It's the perfect book to read with your kids, but it holds up great for adults. And I encourage anyone to read Frederick Bachman and explore his works further.
Thank you, Matthew. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on now to our book buyer and manager extraordinaire, Jeff Battis, who is our nonfiction specialist. He's the man in black. You all know him. You've all been here. And we are so fortunate to have him with us. He's been here since the beginning, and he was at City Lights for 20 plus years. So he brings decades of book buying and bookstore expertise to us. So thank you, Jeff. And he's going to talk to you about some of his favorites right now. We're going to switch.
Hi, welcome. So I only have two books. I'm going to make this kind of quick. Both are about the natural world, which I read a lot about, and naturally the degradation thereof, which is something that we're all talking about. The first is Ahab's Rolling Sea. Ostensibly, it is a book about Melville's writing of Moby Dick and whether he actually knew what he was talking about when he talked about whales and the natural world. But it is more a book about the history of whales and about the whaling industry and about our decimation of multiple species that are incredibly beautiful. And I think we've mentioned this before in a newsletter, but I only picked it up recently and started reading it, and I have been blown away by it. I highly recommend this one. In another life, I review books for another organization, a professional book organization, and I end up reading memoirs, which I normally don't have much an affinity for. And this one blew me away. It happens about once a year that I read something that I am not expecting much of, but I am very impressed by. This is a woman who grew up in the Eastern Sierras in a small town that was decimated by the drought, by water being channeled to the more prosperous areas of California. And like with the best memoirs, it's really not the story she's telling, it's her writing. It's beautiful. You know, think of Joan Didion, think of Annie Dillard. It's on that level. It's just very beautiful. I recommend this very much as well. And that is it for me. I'm going to talk Cheryl into coming back with her glass of wine. Thanks.
You can get your glass of wine. This is so much fun. I hope you guys are having fun. Okay, I'm going to talk about some other nonfiction books. I'm going to add a few recommended titles. One of them is written by, we have so many local authors here. It's so fabulous. This is written by Joan Ryan, The Intangibles, Unlocking the Science and Soul of Team Chemistry. She wrote it with John Shea, and they are both going to be here for an event on September 3rd. It will be a Zoom event, of course, sadly. We wish we could do this all in person, but we can't. But this is a great read. Joan, if you don't know, was an award-winning journalist and one of the first female sports columnists in the country. John Shea is an award-winning national baseball columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. All of you who are Giants baseball fans probably know about him. This is all about, this is based on hundreds of interviews that she did with players, coaches, statisticians, the players themselves, and 5 years of extensive scientific research, talking to neuroscientists, psychologists, physiologists, biologists. And it's all about, you know, does team chemistry exist? What exactly is it? How does it happen? And how powerful is it? It's a real groundbreaking book, and talks about what makes a team click. So I hope you can join us for this live virtual online event, September 3rd. John will also be talking about a book, which I would hold it up, but we sold the last copy this weekend. For those of you who can't get to a baseball game right now, none of us can, and are missing the season as we know it. There's a new book called 24, Life Stories and Lessons from the Say Hey Kid, whom we all know is Willie Mays. It's a just published biography that John collaborated with Willie on this, and I've had really a lot of fun reading it. I grew up in the Bay Area, listening to Giants games and rooting for Willie Mays. I was on my transistor radio in my backyard. So I grew up with the Giants. I love them. Jeff is a huge Giants fan. In fact, I'm surprised he doesn't have his Giants tie on today. He wears it 90% of the time. But it's a really fun book. And what makes it different? John's answered this question. These are stories and insights that have not been shared before. I know there are a lot of books about Willie Mays, but we are getting more of that in, and they'll be talking about that book as well on September 3rd. Oh, the next book I want to talk about is, again, just to make you want to go to France. This is a book about the Louvre. Nothing this comprehensive has ever been written. It's by historian James Gardner, and it's about the fascinating and little-known history of this legendary art museum. It was a humble fortress. It was the royal residence, very palatial for many years until 1682 when they moved to Versailles. Francophiles and art historians alike will rejoice at this book. I've not finished reading it, but I love picking it up and just reading a couple chapters at a time. It's if you like art, if you like museums, if you like France, it's a lot of history, which I didn't know. So it's a great book for summer reading. So this is going to be sort of an unabashed political note that I'm going to take this opportunity to make because I can. I own the store. And that is to say that, as we all, I hope, agree, there is no room in our lives for racism, white supremacy or police brutality. We have a comprehensive collection of books, both fiction and nonfiction, which address the very timely topic of racism and Black Lives, Why Black Lives Matter. But this is one that I would highly recommend. If you can only read one, I'm trying to read more than one, but it's called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I'm happy to say most of these books flew out the door initially. This is a good sign, but we do have them back in. And this is, as the book cover says, why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. And it really is a book that anyone interested in societal change, I think, should read. So this is one of many books I would recommend on that topic. The next is one of my favorite books. And I know that Donovan is with us on this call, but it's a book called What Stars Are Made Of. Yet another local Sausalito author, Donovan Moore. This is kind of, I like to call it Downton Abbey meets Hidden Figures. It is a great biography, but it's also a historical overview of women in science in the early 20th century. Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin was a brilliant scientist and astronomer who made one of the most important discoveries in history, and that is what stars are made of. Alas, she was not recognized for this initially. In fact, her male colleagues insisted she was wrong. Several years later, they agreed she was right, and they took credit for it. Go guys. So this book is a great read. It provides a long overdue tribute to a remarkable woman. And I know Donovan would be happy to sign a copy of the book and personalize it if you'd like. In fact, all of our local authors would be happy to do that, and we're happy to facilitate that. So thank you for this great book, Donovan. And again, a great summer read. The last one I'm going to mention, and I don't know if she's on the call as well, it's called Creating a Life of Integrity. We did an event with Gail Stark right when the lockdown started, and she's also a local author, a very successful businesswoman who has pivoted to writing books, and did this one with the encouragement of her coach and longtime friend, Joseph Goldstein, who is a renowned master of mindfulness, as many of you might know. I am not always very keen on self-improvement books, and I often get lost before I get found when they start getting into Buddhism. But I have to admit that this book was hugely compelling. It's smart, witty, user-friendly. It's basically a 10-step exercise program to hone your integrity muscles. And what better time than now to be thinking about mindfulness? And I have to admit that I do go back to this. It's a great reference, and I keep coming back to it. Recommend it. Okay, we are now, I am now going to turn everything over to Angela King. Angela is our assistant manager and our resident kids book specialist. She has 3 of her own, so she knows what she's talking about. Jacob just graduated from Redwood, right? Was it Redwood, Angela? Yeah. Redwood. And he's off to college. And then she's got the twins, Andy and Jackson, still at home. And she's going to share some of her favorite new books for the younger generations. So take it, Angela. Whoops, you need to be unmuted.
I should be unmuted. Yep. Are we unmuted now?
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Is We Don't Eat Our Classmates. This book came out actually a couple years ago, and I had a friend who was a humanities teacher for 7th and 8th grade, and she thought this book was so funny. She bought it to read to her 7th and 8th grade class the first day of school, and they liked it so much that she ended up buying about another 6 copies to pass out as gifts, because it's very funny. This is Penelope Rex. She is desperate to be loved by her classmates, but as she gets to school, she has a hard time keeping her mouth to herself, and she starts to kind of eat her classmates when they don't do things that she likes. And her teacher always stops her. And as she goes through, she has to learn how to be a proper classmate to her friends. In another week or so, this is by Ryan Higgins. He's coming out with a new one about being a rock star that stars also Penelope. We should have it in the store soon. That was my first book. Great for kids who are getting ready to move off to school, or going back to learning is how I've been hearing it phrased. The next two books actually are crossovers. This is Ivan. That is the picture book that went with Catherine Applegate's The One and Only Ivan that came out several years ago. The One and Only Ivan is a great book for third graders on up. True story about a mountain gorilla that was brought here, I believe it was in the 60s, to live with a man in Portland. And he ended up not being able to take care of the gorilla because you can't have a 600-pound gorilla in your house. Catherine wrote this beautiful story all about Ivan's life. There is now a picture book that is a movie tie-in. The movie stars Bryan Cranston. It comes out on Disney Channel on August 14th, something that you'll want to watch with your kids, your grandkids, whatever little ones you have in your life. And my last book is called Lovely War. And this is a young adult book that is great for adults of all ages. It's set in World War I mostly, about 4 people, two women, 2 men, who meet in London on the brink of all of them, one way or another, going off to support or fight the war at the front. The story is told from the perspective of Aphrodite, who is now on trial for having her fingers in the lives of these 4 people. And it really tells the story of the horrors of war, what happens when you're separated from everything you know, and how love can conquer things, awful things that happen, and how you choose to live your life when you've gone through these kind of episodes in your life. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, thank you.
I do have one question, sorry, that came up while you were talking about Joan Ryan's book. What time is that Zoom event going to be on the September 3rd?
It will be at 5 o'clock, and all of the information on all of these upcoming events, everyone sort of has Zoom fatigue, but we're trying to schedule and plan things that are themed and have a lot of dynamism. I don't think I can promise you Willie Mays that day, but I can promise John Shea and Joan Ryan, and it's 5 o'clock. But you can register there. It's already set up. You can register in advance, and you can also buy a book remotely online. So if you just go to our website, go to events, virtual events, scroll down, you'll find it. So I'm going to finish with 2 gift books. Life goes on, birthdays, graduations, maybe you need a house gift. We have a lot of non-book gifts in the store, as I think most of you know, but 2 of my favorite gift books right now. One of them is What It's Like to Be a Bird by David Allen Sibley. And yes, he's the guy who did, let me see if I can get this the right way. He's the guy who does the Sibley Guides. He's an incredible illustrator. So this book it's fabulous because not only does it have all these great illustrations, but it's about flying, nesting, eating, singing. Why do birds do this? What do they do? And why? And it's got a lot of interesting information. You probably don't know that a 6-pound heron can swallow a 1-pound fish, which is comparable to a 100-pound person. Oh, and that's whole, swallow the fish whole. A 100-pound person swallowing a 17-pound fish. It's comparable to that, whole fish. So it's fun facts, great illustrations. It's a great gift for yourself or the ornithologist in your life. The Audubon Society has interestingly reported that bird watching has gone up dramatically since the pandemic started. Not surprisingly, you can do it on your own, you can get outdoors, it's fresh air. Bird watching is trending. The other book, which we'll be discussing more this Thursday, the 30th at 5 o'clock also, is a beautiful, beautiful coffee table book called Beauty and the Beast. And I'm just gonna I don't know. It's an absolutely gorgeous book, and it was produced by 2 award-winning conservation photographers, Nita Winter and Rob Badger. It's a stunning book with 190 wildflower portraits and landscapes, and they're paired with short stories that have been penned by very passionate scientists and nature writers. So it's a beautiful book, but it's also a very meaningful book because it's all about California wildflowers and climate change. And as I said, this Thursday at 5 p.m., we're going to be doing a virtual tour of much of their photography and talking with Nita and Rob. So you don't need to leave the comfort of your own home. You, again, can go to our website and register for this event by going to our event link. And I bought a copy for myself. It's so heavy, I can barely carry it, but it is a wonderful, wonderful book. And we actually also, as some of you may who've been here since we've reopened to the public, we have some of their prints on the wall as well. So we're going to be just there for sale if any of you are interested. We were hoping to host regular switch out the art every month, but since we're not really encouraged to do live events, we can't do that. But that's kind of it on our end. It is 5:45, 5:47. If there are any questions that anybody would like to ask, I don't know if there's anything on our Q&A or in our chat. But if not, I will just thank you all for joining us. Again, I wish you could be here in person with us. We thank you for your ongoing support. We're going to try and do more of these special events for our Community Supported Bookstore Loyalty Club. So if we don't see you live here in the store, we hope to see you online again soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, wait, there's one other question. Okay.
I think we got them all.
You got them all? Okay.
I think so.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening.